Hello everyone. For decades, Pan American World Airways or PanAm was more than just an airline. It was a symbol of American ingenuity and honestly the golden age of air travel. Its iconic blue globe logo represented a promise of adventure, connecting the world in ways that were, previously unimaginable. PanAm pioneered international routes, introduced the jet age to the masses with the Boeing 707, and later brought in the era of the jumbo jet with the 747. It was the face of luxury, glamour, and the American dream soaring at 30,000 feet. But behind this gleaming facade of progress and prestige lies a darker, more turbulent history. The story of PanAm is also a story of profound tragedy. The airline's history is tragically marked by a series of high-profile disasters that shook the world and shattered countless lives. These weren't just headlines, they were deeply personal catastrophes for the families involved and really a wake-up call for an entire industry. From the foggy runway in Tenerife to the skies over Lockerbie, Scotland, these incidents exposed critical vulnerabilities in aviation, forcing a reckoning with safety protocols, human error, and even the threat of terrorism. Tonight we're going to look back at these key moments in PanAm's history. It's a difficult journey but a necessary one, because it's through understanding these tragedies, through examining what went wrong, that we can appreciate the immense progress that has been made in aviation safety. The lessons learned from these devastating crashes were paid for at an unimaginable cost, but they have fundamentally reshaped the way we fly, making the skies safer for every single one of us today. We'll explore not just the disasters, but the enduring legacies they left behind. The date is March 27, 1977. The location, Los Rodeos Airport on the Spanish island of Tenerife. Thick fog blankets the single runway, reducing visibility to near zero. On that tarmac sit two fully loaded Boeing 747s PanAm Flight 1736 and KLM Flight 4805. A series of unfortunate events, including a terrorist incident at their original destination, had diverted them to this small, congested airport. The PanAm crew, led by Captain Victor Grubbs, was carefully following instructions from air traffic control, taxiing down the runway to find their assigned exit. At the same time, the KLM jet, commanded by the airline's chief of training, Captain Jacob Van Zanten, was positioned at the end of that same runway, preparing for takeoff. What happened next remains the deadliest accident in aviation history. Amidst confusing radio transmissions and the immense pressure to depart, the KLM captain initiated his takeoff roll without clearance from the tower. The PanAm crew saw the KLM's landing lights hurtling towards them through the dense fog, and desperately tried to swerve their aircraft off the runway, but it was too late. The collision was catastrophic, a massive explosion of jet fuel and metal. When the smoke cleared, 583 people were dead, including everyone on the KLM flight and most on the PanAm jet. This disaster sent a shockwave through the industry, exposing fatal flaws in communication and cockpit hierarchy. It directly led to the development of Crew Resource Management, or CRM, empowering all crew members to speak up, and the worldwide standardization of air traffic control phraseology, ensuring a simple takeoff clearance is never misunderstood again. Just days before Christmas, on December 21, 1988, PanAm Flight 103, the Maid of the Seas, departed London's Heathrow Airport, bound for New York City. On board were 259 passengers and crew, many of them students heading home for the holidays. The flight was routine, climbing to its cruising altitude over the serene Scottish countryside. But hidden in the forward cargo hold, inside a cassette player packed into a suitcase, was a bomb made of Semtex plastic explosive. At 7:02 p.m., just 38 minutes into the flight, as the aircraft flew over the small town of Lockerbie, the device detonated. The explosion was instantaneous and violent, tearing a massive hole in the fuselage. The aircraft disintegrated in mid-air, raining debris, luggage, and human remains over an 845-square-mile area. The main wreckage of the wings and fuselage slammed into a residential street in Lockerbie, creating a massive crater and destroying several homes, killing 11 more people on the ground. The total death toll was 270 people from 21 different nations. It was, at the time, the deadliest terrorist attack ever to occur in the United Kingdom. The bombing of PanAm 103 was a watershed moment. It exposed a terrifying new vulnerability for civilian aviation and triggered a global overhaul of airport security. The investigation was one of the largest in history, ultimately leading to a mandate for reinforced baggage containers and sophisticated new explosive detection screening for all checked luggage, changing how we travel forever. On the evening of December 8, 1963, Pan Am Flight 214, a Boeing 707 named the Clipper Tradewind, was in a holding pattern near Elkton, Maryland, waiting for clearance to land in Philadelphia. The weather was turbulent, with thunderstorms crackling around the aircraft. The 81 passengers and crew on board were likely anticipating a bumpy but safe conclusion to their journey from San Juan, Puerto Rico. They had no way of knowing that a rare and catastrophic event was about to unfold. At 8:59 p.m., as the plane circled at 5,000 feet, it was struck by lightning. This wasn't an unusual occurrence. Commercial aircraft are designed to withstand lightning strikes, and are hit, on average, once or twice a year. But this strike was different. It ignited the fuel vapor in one of the plane's reserve fuel tanks, located in the left wing. The resulting explosion was tremendous, ripping the wing from the fuselage. The crippled aircraft spiraled out of control, crashing into a cornfield in a massive fireball visible for miles. All 81 people on board were killed instantly. The investigation into Flight 214 was a pivotal moment for understanding the atmospheric dangers to aviation. It revealed that under specific conditions, a lightning strike could indeed be fatal. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, responded directly to this tragedy. They mandated design changes across the entire industry, including the installation of static discharge wicks on wings and tail surfaces to safely dissipate electrical charges, and new standards for fuel tank ventilation and wiring to prevent vapor ignition. Bali, Indonesia. April 22, 1974. For the 107 passengers and crew aboard PanAm Flight 812, a Boeing 707 named the Clipper Climax, this was supposed to be a stop on an exotic journey from Hong Kong to Sydney. As the aircraft began its approach to Denpasar's airport in the dead of night, the crew was preparing for a landing. The weather was clear, and everything seemed, well, pretty normal in the cockpit. The pilots were navigating using the aircraft's automatic direction finder, or ADF, a standard piece of equipment at the time that relies on ground-based radio beacons. But, a critical misunderstanding was unfolding. The crew was executing a right-hand turn to align with the runway, believing they were in a safe position based on their instrument readings. In reality, a faulty ADF indicator gave them a false sense of security. They were actually flying directly toward a mountainous region north of the airport. Without warning, the aircraft slammed into the rugged terrain of Mount Patas. The impact was devastating, killing all 107 people on board. The investigation highlighted the severe limitations of older navigation systems and the grave danger of what's known as controlled flight into terrain, where a perfectly airworthy aircraft is unknowingly flown into the ground. The crash of Flight 812 became a key case study that accelerated the development and adoption of more advanced navigation aids and, crucially, early versions of the Ground Proximity Warning System, or GPWS, a system designed to give pilots an audible alert, terrain, pull up, if they are in immediate danger of impact. Not every Pan Am story ends in tragedy. The tale of Flight 6 on October 16, 1956 is one of remarkable skill, calm professionalism, and honestly, just incredible luck. The flight, a Boeing 777 Stratocruiser named the Sovereign of the Skies, was on a round-the-world journey. On its leg from Honolulu to San Francisco, deep over the Pacific Ocean in the middle of the night, disaster struck. The number 1 engine began to overspeed, and soon after the number 4 engine failed completely. The crew, led by Captain Richard Ogg, found themselves in a terrifying situation. They were losing altitude too far from either Hawaii or California to make it to land. Captain Ogg made a courageous decision. He would circle a United States Coast Guard weather ship, the USCGC Pontchartrain, that was stationed in the ocean below, and wait for daylight to attempt a water landing, or ditching. For hours, the crew skillfully nursed the crippled plane, burning off fuel to make it lighter and safer for the landing. As dawn broke, with the Coast Guard crew watching and preparing for a rescue, Captain Ogg expertly brought the massive aircraft down onto the waves. The tail broke off on impact, but the main fuselage remained intact and afloat long enough for rescue boats to reach them. In an event that could have easily been a catastrophe, every single one of the 31 people on board was rescued from the cold Pacific waters. The incident became a textbook example of a successful ditching and a testament to the crew's incredible airmanship. Papeete, Tahiti, July 22, 1973. PanAm Flight 816, a Boeing 707, was just beginning its journey from the idyllic Pacific Island to Los Angeles. The night was dark with a low cloud ceiling. Just 30 seconds after lifting off from the runway and climbing over the water, the aircraft initiated a steep left turn. For reasons that remain debated, the plane continued to bank sharply, losing altitude rapidly. In the cockpit, there was likely a moment of intense spatial disorientation, a common and dangerous phenomenon when flying at night over water with no visible horizon. The instruments would have shown a perilous situation, but the pilot's own senses may have been telling them something entirely different. The turn became an uncontrollable spiral. Just over 2 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft plunged into the Pacific Ocean, exploding on impact. The crash was catastrophic. Of the 79 people on board, only one passenger, a Canadian man, miraculously survived, thrown from the wreckage. The subsequent investigation was hampered by the fact that the cockpit voice and flight data recorders were never recovered from the deep water. However, the accident was widely attributed to the crew's failure to properly monitor their flight instruments during a critical phase of flight in challenging visual conditions. This tragedy reinforced the importance of rigorous instrument flight training and strict adherence to procedures, especially during night departures over water, serving as another somber reminder of how quickly a routine flight can turn deadly without unwavering focus on the data provided by the aircraft's systems. November 3, 1973. Boston's Logan International Airport. PanAm Flight 160 was not a passenger flight, but a Boeing 707 cargo freighter on its way from New York to Frankfurt, Germany. Shortly after takeoff, the three-man flight crew reported smoke filling the cockpit, a pilot's nightmare. They immediately declared an emergency and turned back towards Boston for an emergency landing. The source of the smoke was later traced to a shipment of nitric acid that had been improperly packaged, leaking and reacting with the sawdust it was packed in, creating a toxic and vision-obscuring chemical haze. As the smoke thickened, the crew's ability to see their instruments and the runway outside became severely compromised. They struggled to maintain control of the aircraft on the final approach. Tragically, just short of the runway, the aircraft crashed, killing all 3 crew members. The investigation into this seemingly minor cargo flight had major implications for the entire industry. It exposed the immense dangers of transporting hazardous materials and the critical need for strict regulations. The crash of Flight 160 led directly to new FAA rules governing the packaging, labeling and handling of dangerous goods on all aircraft, both cargo and passenger, and spurred the development of smoke evacuation procedures and improved smoke goggles for pilots, adding another layer of safety born from a fatal accident. The story of PanAm is a powerful, often painful chronicle of the evolution of air travel. The tragedies we've discussed tonight are not just isolated incidents in one airline's history. They are pivotal moments that forced the entire aviation world to confront its shortcomings and innovate. From the ashes of these disasters rose a new era of safety. The collision at Tenerife gave us crew resource management and standardized communication, transforming the cockpit from a rigid hierarchy into a collaborative team. The horror of Lockerbie revolutionized airport security, making the screening of checked baggage a global standard we rely on today. Each crash provided a crucial, albeit devastating lesson. Flight 214 taught us about the dangers of lightning, leading to mandatory discharge wicks and safer fuel systems. The loss of Flight 812 over Bali spurred the creation of ground proximity warning systems that have since saved thousands of lives by preventing controlled flight into terrain. Even the cargo crash of Flight 160 in Boston resulted in sweeping changes to how hazardous materials are handled, protecting crews and passengers alike. These advancements weren't theoretical, they were direct responses to catastrophic failures, changes demanded by the loss of life. It's a somber reality that much of modern aviation safety is built upon a foundation of tragedy. The next time you board a flight and hear the standardized language from the cockpit, see the static wicks on the wings, or place your bag on the belt to be scanned, it's worth remembering the history that made those procedures possible. The legacy of PanAm and its fallen flights is a testament to an industry's relentless pursuit of safety. ensuring that the lessons learned from the past continue to protect passengers in the skies today and for generations to come. Thank you for joining me.